Marcus Williams stepped out of his black SUV at LAX airport, wearing simple jeans, a plain white t-shirt, and old sneakers. His beard was untrimmed, and he looked like any regular passenger heading for a flight. What nobody at the airport knew was that Marcus Williams was actually Big Shaq, the famous rapper, and more importantly, he secretly owned Skyline Airlines under a different business name. Marcus had built his fortune not just from music, but from smart investments. 5 years ago, he had quietly purchased the struggling airline company through his investment firm, MW Enterprises. He kept his ownership completely private, even from most of his own staff. He wanted to see how his airline really operated when nobody knew the boss was watching. Today, Marcus was flying to Miami for a surprise visit to check on the airline's operations. He had specifically booked a first-class ticket under his real name, not his stage name. He wanted to travel like a normal, wealthy businessman and observe everything without the usual celebrity treatment. At the check-in counter, Marcus presented his identification and ticket. The young clerk, Jenny, looked at his casual clothes and then at the first-class ticket with suspicion. She had been working for Skyline Airlines for 2 years and had developed a sharp eye for passengers who might be trying to use fake tickets or upgraded seats they didn't pay for. "Sir, are you sure this is your ticket?" Jenny asked, examining the boarding pass carefully. "This is a first-class seat, and it's quite expensive." Marcus smiled politely. "Yes, that's my ticket. I purchased it online yesterday." Jenny looked at his simple clothes again and frowned. She had seen many people try to sneak into first class with fake tickets or by claiming computer errors. His casual appearance didn't match what she expected from a first-class passenger. "I'm going to need to verify this with my supervisor," Jenny said, picking up her phone. "Please wait here." Marcus waited patiently as Jenny spoke quietly with someone on the phone. He found the situation amusing rather than annoying. He was curious to see how his employees handled situations like this. After a few minutes, Jenny returned with her supervisor, Robert, a man in his 40s who took his job very seriously. Robert looked Marcus up and down with obvious disapproval. "Sir, we're having some concerns about your ticket," Robert said in a stern voice. "Our system shows this first-class seat was purchased, but given your appearance, we need to verify that you actually have the means to afford such a ticket." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "What exactly are you asking me to prove?" "We need to see a credit card or bank statement showing that you have the financial means for a first-class ticket," Robert explained. "We've had problems with people using stolen credit cards or fake information to book expensive seats." Marcus reached into his wallet and pulled out his Black American Express card, the exclusive Centurion card that only the wealthiest individuals could obtain. He handed it to Robert calmly. Robert examined the card carefully, but he didn't recognize the significance of the Black Centurion card. To him, it just looked like another credit card. He handed it back to Marcus with a skeptical expression. "Anyone can get a credit card these days," Robert said dismissively. "Do you have any other proof of income? Maybe a pay stub or bank statement?" Marcus almost laughed out loud. Here he was, being questioned about his ability to afford a ticket on his own airline. But he decided to play along and see how far this would go. "I don't carry my pay stubs when I travel," Marcus said calmly. "But I assure you the ticket was purchased legitimately." Robert and Jenny exchanged glances. They had both decided that Marcus was probably trying to scam his way into first class. His calm demeanor only made them more suspicious, as they thought he was being too confident for someone who might be caught in a lie. "Sir, I'm sorry, but we're going to have to move you to an economy seat," Robert announced. "We can't allow you to board in first class without proper verification of your financial status." Marcus felt a mix of amusement and disappointment. He was amused by the irony of the situation, but disappointed that his employees were making assumptions based on appearance rather than following proper procedures. "What if I pay for the first-class upgrade right now?" Marcus suggested. "Would that satisfy your concerns?" Jenny shook her head. Sir, first class is completely sold out. We don't have any seats available for upgrade. You'll need to take the economy seat we're offering, or you can try to book a different flight. Marcus looked around the check-in area. Other passengers were starting to stare at the commotion. He noticed that some of the other first-class passengers, who were dressed in expensive suits and designer clothes, were being processed quickly without any questions. So you're saying that because of how I'm dressed, you don't believe I can afford first class? Marcus asked directly. Robert straightened up defensively. Sir, we're not discriminating against you. We're simply following security protocols. When something seems unusual, we have to investigate. And what seems unusual? Marcus pressed. The fact that I'm not wearing a suit? Jenny jumped in to support her supervisor. Sir, you have to understand our position. First-class passengers usually dress differently. We're just trying to protect the airline from fraud. Marcus nodded slowly. He was getting a very clear picture of how his airline treated customers who didn't fit their expectations of what wealthy people should look like. This was exactly the kind of information he had hoped to discover, though he hadn't expected it to be quite this blatant. All right, Marcus said finally. I'll take the economy seat, but I want to speak with someone higher up about this situation. Robert seemed relieved that Marcus was backing down. Of course, sir. You can file a complaint with customer service once you're on board, or you can contact our main office after your flight. As Marcus accepted his new boarding pass for seat 32B in economy class, he made mental notes about everything that had happened. He was already planning the conversation he would have with the airline's management team about proper customer service training and anti-discrimination policies. What Robert and Jenny didn't know was that their behavior was being observed not just by other passengers, but by the man who had the power to change their employment status with a single phone call. Marcus Williams was about to give them a lesson they would never forget. But first, he wanted to see how the flight crew would treat him during the actual flight. As he walked toward the security checkpoint, Marcus pulled out his phone and sent a quick text message to his assistant. Flying Skyline Flight 447 to Miami today. Having an interesting experience with customer service. We'll call you when I land. The real education was just beginning, and Marcus was curious to see what other surprises awaited him on his own airline. Marcus made it through security without any problems and arrived at his gate 30 minutes before boarding. He sat in the waiting area, observing the other passengers and airline staff. He noticed how the gate agents treated different passengers differently based on their appearance and ticket class. When boarding began, first-class passengers were called first. Marcus watched as elegantly dressed passengers walked past him with their priority boarding passes. Then business class was called, followed by premium economy. Finally, general boarding was announced for economy passengers. Marcus got in line with the other economy passengers. As he approached the gate, he handed his boarding pass to Sandra, the gate agent. Sandra was a woman in her 30s who had been working for Skyline Airlines for 4 years. She was known among her colleagues for being very strict about following procedures, especially when it came to passenger seating. Sandra looked at Marcus's boarding pass and then at him. She noticed his casual clothing and worn sneakers. Something about him seemed familiar, but she couldn't place where she might have seen him before. Sir, this shows you were originally booked in first class, Sandra said, looking at her computer screen. But you've been moved to economy. Was there a problem with your original booking? Marcus decided to be honest. The check-in staff questioned whether I could afford first class based on my appearance. They moved me to economy even though I had a valid first-class ticket. Sandra frowned. She had heard about situations like this before, but company policy was clear that valid tickets should be honored regardless of passenger appearance. However, she also knew that her colleagues at check-in were experienced and probably had good reasons for their decision. Well, if there was a problem with your ticket, I'm sure they handled it correctly, Sandra said diplomatically. Enjoy your flight in economy. Marcus took his boarding pass and walked down the jet bridge. As he entered the aircraft, he was greeted by flight attendant Rebecca Martinez. Rebecca was 28 years old and had been working as a flight attendant for Skyline Airlines for 3 years. She took great pride in her work and was known for providing excellent service to first-class passengers. Rebecca noticed Marcus immediately because he was clearly walking toward the economy section, but kept glancing toward first class. In her experience, passengers who did this were usually disappointed about not being able to afford better seats, or they were trying to sneak into first class when flight attendants weren't looking. "Excuse me, sir," Rebecca called out as Marcus paused near the first-class cabin. "Can I help you find your seat?" Marcus showed her his boarding pass. "I'm looking for seat 32B. Rebecca glanced at the boarding pass and then looked at Marcus with a suspicious expression. "That's in economy, sir. Row 32 is toward the back of the aircraft." "I know where it is," Marcus replied. "I was just looking around." Rebecca's suspicion grew stronger. She had dealt with many passengers who tried to sit in first class without proper tickets. His casual clothes and the way he was lingering near the premium cabin made her think he might be planning to cause trouble. "Sir, I need you to proceed directly to your assigned seat," Rebecca said firmly. "Passengers aren't allowed to loiter in the aisles, especially near first class." Marcus was surprised by her tone, but he decided to comply. "Of course. I'm going to my seat now." As Marcus walked toward the back of the plane, Rebecca watched him carefully. She made a mental note to keep an eye on him during the flight. In her experience, passengers who acted suspiciously during boarding often caused problems later. Marcus found his seat in economy class between a businessman reading on his tablet and a college student wearing headphones. The seat was cramped compared to what he was used to, but he was more interested in observing the service than being comfortable. Once all passengers were boarded and the plane was ready for takeoff, Rebecca and the other flight attendants began their safety demonstration. Marcus noticed that Rebecca seemed to pay special attention to the first-class section, making sure those passengers had everything they needed. After takeoff, the beverage service began. Rebecca and another flight attendant, James, started in first class with a full selection of premium drinks and snacks. Marcus watched as they spent considerable time with each first-class passenger, offering multiple options and ensuring complete satisfaction. When the flight attendants finally reached economy class, their demeanor was noticeably different. They moved more quickly and offered fewer choices. When Rebecca reached Marcus's row, she barely made eye contact. "What would you like to drink?" Rebecca asked in a rushed voice. "Could I have a ginger ale, please?" Marcus requested politely. Rebecca handed him a small plastic cup with ginger ale and a tiny bag of pretzels. She was already moving to the next row before Marcus could say thank you. About an hour into the flight, Marcus decided to stretch his legs. He got up and walked toward the front of the plane, planning to use the restroom near the galley. As he passed the first-class section, he noticed how much more spacious and comfortable the seats were compared to economy. Rebecca spotted him immediately and quickly approached him. "Sir, excuse me, where are you going?" "I'm just walking to the restroom," Marcus explained. "The economy restrooms are in the back of the aircraft," Rebecca said sternly. "This restroom is for first-class passengers only." Marcus looked around and saw that there was indeed a restroom nearby, and no signs indicating it was restricted to first-class passengers. "I don't see any signs saying it's first class only." Rebecca's voice became more firm. "Sir, it's airline policy. Economy passengers must use the economy restrooms. Please return to your seat and use the appropriate facilities." Marcus found this interesting. He knew his own airline's policies, and there was no rule restricting restroom usage based on ticket class. Rebecca was either making up rules or had been incorrectly trained. "Could you show me where this policy is written?" Marcus asked calmly. Rebecca was getting annoyed. She felt that Marcus was being difficult and trying to challenge her authority. In her mind, he was exactly the type of passenger she had expected him to be based on his appearance and behavior during boarding. "Sir, I don't need to show you written policies. I'm telling you the rules, and you need to follow them. Please return to your seat immediately. Marcus decided not to push the issue further at this moment. He walked to the back of the plane and used the economy restroom, but he made another mental note about Rebecca's behavior and apparent lack of knowledge about actual company policies. When Marcus returned to his seat, he overheard the businessman next to him talking on the phone during a brief period when personal devices were allowed. The man was complaining to someone about the poor service in economy class compared to first class on other airlines. The flight attendants here don't seem to care about economy passengers at all, the businessman said quietly. I've flown first class on other airlines and the service difference is reasonable, but this is just rude. Marcus realized that what he was experiencing wasn't unique to him. Other passengers were also noticing the stark difference in treatment between first class and economy. This wasn't just about discrimination based on appearance. It was about a general attitude problem among his flight crew. During the rest of the flight, Marcus observed several more incidents. He watched Rebecca and James provide attentive, friendly service to first-class passengers while treating economy passengers with barely concealed annoyance. They seemed to view economy passengers as an inconvenience rather than valued customers. When a woman in economy asked for an extra bag of pretzels, Rebecca sighed audibly before reluctantly providing it. When a first-class passenger asked for the same thing, Rebecca smiled warmly and offered several different snack options. Marcus also noticed that Rebecca continued to watch him throughout the flight, as if she expected him to cause trouble. Every time he got up to stretch or use the restroom, she kept an eye on him and made sure he didn't venture toward first class. As the plane began its descent into Miami, Marcus reflected on everything he had observed. The problems weren't just with individual employees. There seemed to be a cultural issue within his airline that needed to be addressed at a systemic level. Rebecca made the standard announcement about preparing for landing, and Marcus couldn't help but notice that even her announcement sounded more enthusiastic when she addressed first-class passengers directly. The plane landed smoothly at Miami International Airport, and passengers began gathering their belongings. Marcus waited patiently in his seat as first-class passengers were allowed to deplane first, followed by business class and premium economy. As Marcus finally stood up to leave the aircraft, Rebecca was stationed at the exit door saying goodbye to passengers. When the first-class passengers passed by, she thanked them warmly and invited them to fly with Skyline Airlines again soon. When Marcus reached the exit, Rebecca barely acknowledged him. "Thank you for flying with us," she said in a monotone voice, already looking past him to the next passenger. Marcus paused at the doorway and looked directly at Rebecca. "Thank you for a very educational flight," he said with a slight smile. Rebecca didn't understand why he was smiling or what he meant by educational, but she was glad to see him leaving the aircraft. As far as she was concerned, Marcus had been exactly the type of difficult passenger she had expected him to be. What Rebecca didn't know was that her behavior, along with that of her colleagues, had just been evaluated by the owner of the airline. And Marcus Williams was about to make some phone calls that would change everything for Skyline Airlines, starting with a comprehensive review of customer service policies and staff training programs. Marcus walked through the jet bridge with his phone already in his hand, ready to begin the process of transforming his airline into something he could be truly proud of. Marcus Williams walked through Miami International Airport with his phone pressed to his ear. He had just called his personal assistant, Maria, who had been with him for 5 years and knew all about his business investments, including his secret ownership of Skyline Airlines. "Maria, I need you to set up an emergency meeting with the Skyline Airlines executive team for tomorrow morning," Marcus said as he walked toward the baggage claim area. "All department heads need to be there. Tell them the owner wants to discuss customer service policies." Maria was surprised. "Sir, should I tell them you're the owner? Most of them still don't know about your ownership of the airline." "Not yet," Marcus replied. "Just tell them the owner will be represented by MW Enterprises. I want to see their reactions when they think they're meeting with my business manager instead of me directly." After ending the call, Marcus took a taxi to his Miami hotel. During the ride, he called his lawyer and accountant to discuss the legal and financial implications of the discrimination he had experienced. He wanted to make sure that any changes he made to company policies would be legally sound and properly documented. The next morning, Marcus dressed in an expensive business suit and arrived at the Skyline Airlines corporate headquarters in Miami. He had arranged for Maria to introduce him as Marcus Williams, the chief representative of MW Enterprises, the investment firm that owned the airline. This would allow him to observe the executive team's behavior before revealing his true identity. The conference room was filled with Skyline Airlines executives, including CEO Patricia Thompson, Customer Service Director Michael Rodriguez, and Human Resources Director Sarah Chen. Also present were several department managers, including airport operations and flight crew supervisors. Maria stood up to address the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming on such short notice. I'd like to introduce Marcus Williams, the chief representative of MW Enterprises, which, as you know, is the parent company that owns Skyline Airlines. Mr. Bao, Williams has some serious concerns about customer service that need immediate attention." Marcus stood up and looked around the room. He recognized some of the executives from company reports, but this was the first time he had met most of them in person. He decided to start by describing his experience without revealing that he was the passenger involved. "Yesterday, I received a detailed report about a passenger who experienced discrimination on one of our flights," Marcus began. "This passenger was moved from first class to economy based solely on his appearance, despite having a valid first-class ticket. He was then treated poorly by flight crew members who made assumptions about him based on how he was dressed." CEO Patricia Thompson shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "Mr. Williams, I can assure you that we don't tolerate discrimination at Skyline Airlines. If this really happened, it was an isolated incident involving employees who weren't following proper procedures." "I don't think it was isolated," Marcus replied. "The passenger observed systematic differences in how first-class and economy passengers were treated, beyond normal service-level differences. Flight attendants were rude to economy passengers and enforced fake policies that don't actually exist." Customer Service Director Michael Rodriguez spoke up. "Sir, could you give us more specific details about this incident? We'd like to investigate it thoroughly and take appropriate action." Marcus smiled. "The passenger was traveling on Flight 447 from Los Angeles to Miami yesterday. His original seat was 3A in first class, but he was moved to 32B in economy. The check-in staff members involved were Jenny and her supervisor, Robert. The primary flight attendant was Rebecca Martinez. Sarah Chen, the HR director, was already taking notes. We'll pull the flight records and interview all the employees involved. If they violated company policies, they'll face disciplinary action." "That's good to hear," Marcus said. "But I think the problem goes deeper than individual employees. I want to understand what kind of training these employees receive regarding customer service and anti-discrimination policies." Michael Rodriguez looked defensive. "We provide comprehensive training to all our employees. They know that discrimination based on race, gender, or appearance is not tolerated." "Then why did this happen?" Marcus asked directly. "If the training is so comprehensive, how did multiple employees at different points in the passenger journey all make the same type of discriminatory decisions?" The room fell silent. The executives exchanged glances, clearly uncomfortable with the line of questioning. Patricia Thompson decided to take control of the conversation. "Mr. Williams, we appreciate MW Enterprises' concern about these issues," she said diplomatically. "We'll conduct a thorough investigation and implement any necessary changes to prevent similar incidents in the future." Marcus leaned forward. "I want more than just an investigation. I want a complete overhaul of customer service training. New policies that explicitly prohibit discrimination based on appearance or assumed income level. and a system for monitoring employee behavior to ensure these policies are followed. That sounds reasonable, Sarah Chen agreed. We can work with you to develop new training programs and policies. Marcus nodded. Good. Now I want you to know that the passenger who experienced this discrimination has decided not to pursue legal action. However, he has requested a personal meeting with the employees involved to discuss the incident directly. Patricia Thompson looked worried. A personal meeting? Is that really necessary? We could handle the disciplinary action internally and provide the passenger with compensation for his poor experience. He specifically requested the meeting, Marcus insisted. He wants to make sure the employees understand the impact of their behavior and learn from the experience. I think it's a reasonable request. Michael Rodriguez hesitated. What kind of meeting are we talking about? Would this be a formal complaint session or more of an educational discussion? Educational, Marcus replied. The passenger wants to help improve the airline's service, not destroy anyone's career. But he wants to speak directly with Jenny, Robert, Rebecca, and anyone else who was involved in the incident. Sarah Chen made more notes. We can arrange that. When would this meeting take place? Marcus looked at his watch. This afternoon, if possible. The passenger is still in Miami and available to meet today. The executives agreed to arrange the meeting for later that day. Marcus spent the rest of the morning working with the HR team to review current customer service policies and training materials. He was shocked to discover how outdated and inadequate much of the training was. At 2 o'clock that afternoon, Jenny, Robert, Rebecca, and several other employees were called to a conference room for what they were told was a customer service meeting. They had been informed that a passenger wanted to discuss his recent flight experience, but they weren't told any other details. When the employees entered the conference room, they saw the airline executives seated at one end of a long table. At the other end sat a man in an expensive business suit whom they didn't recognize. Patricia Thompson stood up to address the group. Thank you all for coming. We're here to discuss a customer service incident that occurred yesterday on Flight 447. The passenger involved has requested this meeting to share his experience directly with the staff members who served him. Marcus stood up slowly and looked at each employee. Jenny, Robert, and Rebecca all looked confused, not recognizing him at all. He realized that his change from casual clothes to a business suit had completely transformed his appearance in their eyes. Yesterday, I was a passenger on Flight 447, Marcus began. I was dressed casually in jeans and a t-shirt. I had a first-class ticket, but I was moved to economy because staff members decided I didn't look like I could afford first class. Recognition slowly dawned on the employees' faces. Jenny turned pale. Robert shifted nervously in his seat, and Rebecca's eyes widened with shock. Marcus continued speaking in a calm, measured voice. I want you to understand that what you did wasn't just poor customer service, it was discrimination. You made assumptions about my financial status based on my appearance, and you treated me differently because of those assumptions. Rebecca found her voice first. Sir, I was just following what I thought were the correct procedures. I didn't mean to discriminate against you. But you did discriminate, Marcus replied. You enforced policies that don't exist, like telling me I couldn't use the first-class restroom. You watched me suspiciously throughout the flight as if I was going to cause trouble, and you treated me with barely concealed annoyance while providing excellent service to other passengers. Robert tried to defend his actions. We were trying to protect the airline from ticket fraud. We've had problems with people using fake or stolen credit cards to book expensive seats. And what evidence did you have that my ticket was fraudulent? Marcus asked. Did you run my credit card? Did you check with the bank? Or did you simply decide that someone dressed casually couldn't afford first class? Jenny spoke up quietly. We made assumptions. I realize now that we were wrong. Marcus nodded. You were wrong. But more importantly, you cost this airline money. Do you know how much a first-class ticket costs on this route? Robert shook his head. $1,500, Marcus continued. By moving me to economy, you cost the airline the difference between a $1,500 ticket and a $400 ticket. That's $1,100 in lost revenue from one passenger, based on your assumptions about how wealthy people should dress. The room was completely silent. The employees were beginning to understand the financial impact of their decisions, not just the personal impact on Marcus. Marcus walked around the table and stood behind his chair. But the financial cost isn't the biggest problem. The biggest problem is that you created a terrible experience for a customer, and you probably do the same thing to other customers regularly. Patricia Thompson decided to speak. Mr. Williams, we want to assure you that this type of behavior will not be tolerated going forward. These employees will receive additional training and will implement new policies to prevent similar incidents. Marcus looked directly at the CEO. Actually, Patricia, there's something else you need to know. He paused and looked around the room at all the confused faces. My full name is Marcus Williams, but I'm also known by another name in the entertainment industry. I'm the artist called Big Shaq. Several employees gasped in recognition, but Marcus wasn't finished. More importantly for this discussion, Marcus continued, MW Enterprises isn't just the parent company that owns this airline. MW Enterprises is my company. I own Skyline Airlines. The silence in the room was deafening. Patricia Thompson's face went white. The employees looked like they wanted to disappear into their chairs. Marcus sat back down and smiled. Now, I want you to understand that I didn't reveal this information to embarrass anyone or to get people fired. I revealed it because I want you to understand how important customer service is to the success of this business. Every passenger who flies with us is helping to pay your salaries. Every passenger deserves respect, regardless of how they're dressed or what assumptions you might make about them. Rebecca was the first to find her voice. Mr. Williams, sir, I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry for how I treated you. I accept your apology, Marcus replied. But I want more than apologies. I want changes. Real, lasting changes that will improve the experience for every passenger who flies with this airline. He turned to address the executives. Patricia, Michael, Sarah, you're going to work with my team to completely overhaul customer service training. Every employee will learn about unconscious bias, proper customer service techniques, and the real policies of this airline. No more made-up rules. Patricia nodded eagerly. Absolutely, sir. We'll start immediately. Marcus looked back at the employees. Jenny, Robert, Rebecca, you're not being fired, but you are going to become part of the solution. You're going to help train other employees about what not to do, using your experience with me as a teaching tool. You're going to help make sure this never happens to another passenger. The employees looked relieved and grateful for the second chance. I also want to implement a mystery shopper program, Marcus continued. We'll have people dressed in all different ways, buying tickets and flying on our planes to test how they're treated. Employees who provide excellent service, regardless of passenger appearance, will be rewarded. Those who don't will receive additional training. Sarah Chen was taking detailed notes. We can start developing these programs immediately. Marcus stood up to conclude the meeting. I want everyone to remember something important. This airline succeeds when we treat every passenger like they're the most important person on the plane. We never know who's sitting in seat 32B. It might be someone who looks ordinary but has extraordinary influence. It might be someone who's flying for the first time and will tell everyone they know about their experience. Or it might be the person who owns the airline. He looked around the room one final time. Treat every passenger like they might be all three of those things because someday they just might be. As the meeting ended and people began filing out of the room, Rebecca approached Marcus hesitantly. Mr. Williams, I want you to know that this experience has really opened my eyes, she said sincerely. I never realized how my assumptions were affecting passengers. I promise I'll do better. Marcus shook her hand. That's all I can ask for, Rebecca. Learn from this experience and help others learn from it too. 6 months later, Skyline Airlines had become known in the industry for having some of the best customer service in the business. The comprehensive training program developed after Marcus's experience had transformed the company culture. Employee satisfaction was up, customer complaints were down, and the airline was more profitable than ever. Marcus still flew on his own airline regularly, sometimes in first class and sometimes in economy, always dressed differently to test how passengers were treated. He was proud to see that the changes had created lasting improvements. The story of his experience became a case study used in business schools and customer service training programs across the country. It served as a powerful reminder that assumptions about people based on appearance can be costly in more ways than one, and that treating every customer with respect and dignity isn't just morally right, it's also good business.